In 1953, again, when the debunking policy was established, the National Security Council at the White House asked H.P. Robertson, a very famous scientist at that time, to conduct what has been come to known as the Robertson panel. And it was classified top secret. And we, not too long ago, got a copy of a sanitized version of that. And in it, they outline a complete debunking program. And one of the things that they stressed was using well-known personalities to get on TV and radio. Even Walt Disney, they wanted to use Walt Disney Productions to do exactly what you say, build up a case that looked like it was a real UFO, and then after everybody thought this was real, then they pull the rug out from under it. And they actually, in detail, showed how this could be done, and it should be done. And this is the policy that they've been carrying out ever since.
It goes back to 1953 when a CIA-involved investigation was held. As a result of the extremely heavy wave of sightings in 1952, the CIA and Air Force became so concerned over the sheer number of reports that were tying up American intelligence channels that they wanted to get this signal out of the system, asked the Air Force, the CIA asked the Air Force for a debunking policy. The literal wording was to debunk the flying saucers, to decrease public interest in the UFOs. Regulations were promulgated very shortly that made it a crime punishable with, I think it's $10,000 fine and or 10 years in prison to release any information at airbase level on UFOs. And as a result of that, in a sequence of steady downgrading, the whole problem has been essentially lost from scientific sight in the U.S., and nothing resembling any scientific investigation has been going on in the past 15 years.
In December of 1969, December 17th, 1969, the United States Air Force again told the public that it had terminated its UFO program, and now covertly investigates the better civilian sightings and concentrates mostly on government source control cases and airline pilot cases under the order JANP 146, a Joint Army Air Force Navy order, which outlines what military civilian pilots are supposed to do when they see a UFO sighting. They submit what they call a service report, which contains information vital to the security of the United States. Once they make an official report, they're subjected to $10,000 fine and or 10 years in jail if they reveal the contents of this report. The regulations that prohibit pilots talking about UFOs, even civilian pilots, JANP 146 is a regulation specifically designed to treat objects which are a threat to national security. And yet the Air Force tells the public that UFOs are not a threat to national security. They're the product of hoaxes, hallucinations, and misinterpretations.
Has this been typical of the attitude of most world governments?
As nearly as I can tell, yes. There seems to be quite surprising similarity between the official Russian, British, Australian, Canadian, American, French, Italian pronouncements. They all seem to take the view that there's nothing to it, that it's a lot of nonsense, that people see things, and that it is not a real scientific problem at all, and I most heartily disagree with that.
You have been as far as the United Nations with this problem.
Yes, about 2-3 weeks ago, on the 7th of this month, of June, nearly a month ago now, I spoke to the Outer Space Affairs Group in the United Nations, urging immediate UN action on this problem. It seems to me that the UN is one of the best places to tackle the international, the global aspects of the UFO problem, and all evidence now points to its being a truly global phenomenon.
U Thant made a statement at the time.
I didn't get to see U Thant. That was a busy day, June 7th. In fact, I had a date to see him at 4 o'clock, and if there was any 1 hour that was the peak of the Mideast crisis, 4 o'clock was it. So I unfortunately didn't get to see U Thant. But quite recently, a few days ago, I got a phone call from San Francisco pointing out that he had made a statement to Drew Pearson, an American columnist, that aside from the Vietnamese War, the UFO problem is the greatest international problem. And I sent him a wire strongly endorsing his position, but disagreeing with him to the extent of saying that I believe it's the most important international problem.
Why?
We have in the UFO problem a very strange situation. Here for 20 years plus, Essentially similar phenomena have been reported all over the world, large numbers in the U.S., officialdom ignoring them, air forces ignoring them, and yet apparently a steady increase in the numbers of reliable reports from people in all walks of life seeing these objects that are not products of our technology, that are not meteorological astronomical phenomena, hovering at low altitude, increasing numbers in urban areas, and collectively we don't know what's going on. That's an extremely unwise situation, no matter how you view it. We do not know what is involved in this problem. There are no strong indications of anything resembling hostility. I see some faint indications of hazard and danger, but in general, to have this possibility that the world is under something resembling reconnaissance, possibly from some extraterrestrial source, and to go on about our petty ways collectively doesn't seem to me to be a wise situation. So I'm trying to get scientists and governmental agencies to take a look at this at a highly accelerated pace.
And it's a shame, but I'm sure that they're doing it in the best interest of this country. It's just that people like myself and people who have actually been associated with the UFO program feel that the subject is much bigger than national security, and knowledge of what's going on could affect man's evolution, really, his thought, his philosophy, his religion, across all of society. There could be some major changes, but why wait, until something happens where all of a sudden something has to be told the public all at once? Why not, over the years, do it gradually?
Persons of really quite high credibility reporting unconventional objects, discs, cigar-shaped objects, frequently at very low elevation, hovering over sometimes urban areas, sometimes over cars, following cars. Same kind of public reaction, quite a strong similarity to the American reluctance to report them to official channels because of fear of ridicule. But behind it all, a very large number, a very surprisingly large number of these sightings of quite unconventional objects maneuvering in our airspace.
Other than very, very good photographs, and there are some very good photographs, the negatives have been analyzed by experts and proved genuine. You have radar visual sightings by civilians, and radar visual sightings by military. Some of the documents that we have received through the Freedom of Information Act give excellent examples of radar visual sightings where ground radar will pick up an unusual behaving object. An interceptor will try to intercept the object, pick it up on airborne radar. Ground personnel, the pilot and the radar observer, will see the object. Radar will see the object on the ground, and from the airborne radar, behaving exactly is what they're seeing visually. These are very good sightings, radar visual sightings. You have physical trace cases. You have physical trace cases all over the country and all over the world where specific types of indentations, imprints, scorched areas are found. One in Idaho might look like one they found in France, the exact type of thing, exact type of object, indicating that something has been there. The French government recently issued their first civilian report. They initiated a multi-million-dollar study maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and some of the physical trace cases that they have investigated, they claim are completely unexplainable, and that they seem to be attributed to a flying machine, which they don't know the origin of the flying machine or how it's sustained or so forth. It's an unidentified flying object that's caused these traces. So you have the physical trace cases, you have the physical reaction to sightings, which I've just mentioned, the burns, the radiation left at the site. Then you have the overwhelming anecdotal data from people all over the world from all walks of life, trained observers who don't just see a distant light in the sky, but they see something as close as my car in the driveway, pull up beside them wingtip formation, and they're able to watch it for 15 to 20 minutes, more than one person, describing the same thing, the same flight characteristics as people are doing all over the world. So that's the type of evidence we have. There are those who feel that the government has hardware. Gordon Cooper, again, indicated that he has heard some highly placed rumors concerning crashed UFOs. a retrieval, he says, not only of just the UFO, but remains of bodies. I came closest to a report like this, talking to an individual at GTE who holds a high managerial position, who has a top secret clearance, and who worked as a civilian for the Air Force back in 1953. And his expertise was landing gear and also assessing the damage done to crashed aircraft. And he was on loan to the Atomic Energy Commission out at Frenchman's Flats, Nevada at the time, and he was assessing damage done to bridges and different types of buildings that were subjected to atomic bomb tests from different heights. There'd be atomic bombs on towers and drop parachutes and so forth. And he claims that right in the middle of these tests that he was called away and told to report to a certain office that he was going to have to go on a 2-day mission to a 3-day mission for something that he couldn't write or talk about. And he claims, just briefly, the story goes like this. He was flown from Indian Springs Air Force Base to a civilian airfield in Arizona. I think it was Tucson or Phoenix. I can't remember. I'd have to look at the report. But at the airfield, he was met by an air policeman who escorted him to a military bus that had all the windows blacked out. He got on the bus, and he was told not to talk to anybody, to surrender all his valuables, which he did, and they put him in a cloth bag, put his name on it. A full colonel, after everybody was assembled, told them that we're going to go for a long ride, that they were not to talk to each other, that they were going to investigate the crash of a super-secret vehicle, which they couldn't talk about, and they had to take an oath. And when they finally got there, he thought they drove around for 2 or 3 hours. He didn't know they took his watch away. When they got there was a bright light on the bus, blinding bright light. And when it was his turn to get out, he says he couldn't see anything. This light was just blazing. And when they finally got behind the light, there was this 30-foot in diameter object shaped like a bowl, inverted upon a bowl with a slight rim around it with orifices. And he was told to determine the falling speed and forward speed at time of impact. And that was all. And he wasn't to ask any other questions about the object. He said that there were generators there were power cables going into the object, there was an opening, and there were people inside doing something. There was a tent pitched beside the object with remains of small beings, but he wasn't allowed to ask any questions and so forth. When he got back to the bus, they were all told, each person that went out and did their own thing, that they were going to go back and they were going to handwrite a report of their findings. They were not to type it. They were to call a number. It would be reported. That would be picked up, and they were sworn to secrecy. Now, that's just a peripheral summary of what this fellow told me. I conducted a character reference check, went all the way back from where he works at GTE now, all the way back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which was Wright Field in those days. Talked to people there, highly placed people who still there, knew this individual. Everybody gave him a clean bill of health. He didn't seek any publicity. There was a movie called Hangar 18 that came out, put out by Sun Classics, and they called me because they knew of this particular sighting that I had investigated. They offered this fellow money through me to do a documentary. He returned it down. He didn't want to compromise the story at all in any way using his name because of his position at GTE and because what his peers would think of him because he had taken an oath. So you have highly placed rumors that they actually have crash retrieval cases. Whether they're true or not, we only can wait and see, but they come from people with impeccable credentials. From what we gather, talking to quite a few people over the years, they are being kept at certain places, and that autopsies have been performed and so forth and so on. But all of these things are highly placed rumors, and it's not as objective as sighting a UFO sitting on quadruped or tripod legs, watching it take off, a lot of witnesses, and then going and finding indentations, radiation, and burned areas. I mean, that's something tangible you can take a picture of. There was one sighting down in Socorro, New Mexico, we found out from Dr. William Powers, who was an Air Force astronomer who helped investigate that case. He said that they use a penetrometer on each one of those pad marks, and there was a ton sitting on each one of those. He said the center of gravity within the quadruped landing gear was right over burn number 1. it was seen or heard by about 13 different people. One policeman actually got within 15 feet of it before it started to make noises, and sort of a blue plasma-like flame come out of the bottom, and he had to retreat about 50 feet and dove to the ground. But he watched it slowly take off. He watched the blue plasma just go up like that out of sight until it was just sitting there. Then it was a high-pitched whine, a low-pitched whine, and it just sat there, no noise at all. And then it started moving away like this. And he went to try to radio for help, and his radio wouldn't work until the object was out of sight. But within minutes, state police were there, and there were the indentations, there was the scorched areas, greasewood was still burning, Coke bottle or some type of bottle calcined, melted. That's the type of evidence that we have.
We have in the UFO problem a very strange situation. Here for 20 years plus, essentially similar phenomena have been reported all over the world, large numbers in the U.S., officialdom ignoring them, Air Forces ignoring them, and yet apparently a steady increase in the numbers of reliable reports from people in all walks of life seeing these objects that are not products of our technology, that are not meteorological astronomical phenomena, hovering at low altitude, increasing numbers in urban areas, and collectively we don't know what's going on. That's an extremely unwise situation, no matter how you view it. We do not know what is involved in this problem. There are no strong indications of anything resembling hostility. I see some faint indications of hazard and danger, but in general, to have this possibility that the world is under something resembling reconnaissance, possibly from some extraterrestrial source, and to go on about our petty ways collectively doesn't seem to me to be a wise situation. So I'm trying to get scientists and governmental agencies to take a look at this at a highly accelerated pace.